Good afternoon. My name is Carla Merner. I'm with the American Dietetic Association, and I'll be monitoring the Twitter stream for our virtual audience today. You are in Building a Virtual Expo and Sponsorship Sales Program that delivers results. Our speakers are Todd Kutlark, Christian Fallon, and Marie Bass. They'll be taking questions during their presentation. They'll decide when they do it. And I'd ask you please to come up to the microphone so the virtual audience can see or can hear your question. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for sticking around for the last session of the day. We appreciate you being here. We've got a practical, nuts and bolts presentation today, which we hope you'll be able to have some great takeaways when you leave the room. So we want to talk about building sponsorship programs that deliver results. And we come from different perspectives, as you'll learn as we go along. And what that means is that there's no specific one-size-fits-all sales model that works for selling a virtual trade show, but you can evaluate what we have to say and take away what you will, and hopefully this will help you in your efforts. So what I'm going to talk about is, I want to do a quick survey of who we've got in the room today. I'll tell you a little bit about my company and the virtual events that we've produced, and I'm going to offer you 5 steps to building a sales program for virtual shows. So just by a show of hands, who here is representing a publisher or a media company? No one. Okay, interesting. Associations in the room?
Yeah.
Okay.
With publishing.
With publishing?
Thank you.
Okay. And then what about other? Must be everyone else. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Anybody in the room producing current live events right now? Okay, about 5 or 6 of you. Great. And what about, do you produce other sponsored digital media, like a virtual trade show already? Who's doing a virtual trade show? Or webcasts? Okay. A few hands, about half of the audience. Okay, great. Well, that helps me kind of know and get a perspective of how to take it from here. My company is called Trade Press Media. I'm the director of live events for Trade Press. We have products that service the United States and the Mexican market. It's a traditional publishing company, 95 years old, with lots of magazines. But in 2001, we launched a live events division, which now currently involve 3 major trade shows in the U.S. and Canada, and now with 2 virtual trade shows as well. We have about 60 people in our organization, 11 of them in the course of what they do during the day. Part of that is involved with our live events and now our virtual events as well. We also have an exposition partner that helps us with the mechanics and the operations of our live events. We have 6 magazine niche B2B titles and online products in 3 verticals: the facility management market, the Jan Sand cleaning industry, and the rail industry. So we launched virtual events in 2010 and produced 2 shows, one in the Jan Sand cleaning industry and one in the facility management industry. They were successful, they were profitable, and they delivered metrics that satisfied our sponsors and exhibitors. And so we are going to produce 5 shows this year in 2011, God willing. So
you can do it.
So now my 5 steps. Okay. The first thing you need, in my opinion, is to find a sales champion in your organization. And as we know and as you've learned throughout the course of today, there's lots of different things that go into doing an event. So not to say that anything is more important than the other. I'm going to specifically focus on sales. But yes, you need the education and the content department. You need a marketing department to draw the audience. But for sales, you need a specific sales champion. And in my instance, that's me. And that's the go-to person who can answer any question from an exhibitor or a potential prospect or the sales team. In my opinion, that should not be a content or education department person. It should be someone who comes from the sales and marketing side of the ledger. I do lots of different sales championing in my company, but when it comes to virtual trade shows, I have the blinders on, and when I'm talking to a prospect or a salesperson, it's all about virtual trade shows. The person needs to be a passionate leader. Can't go half-hearted into launching a virtual trade show. You've got to believe in the technology, believe in the results it can deliver, and get excited about it. What we found 2 years ago when we started working on the project of launching a trade show, we found that it's a very steep learning curve for our customer base. You know, we're not talking to the technical industry. We're not talking to engineers or computer people. We're talking to facility managers and janitors in the two segments that we launched the shows this year. So. The typical encounter is, Mr. Prospect, have you ever heard of a virtual trade show? Or have you ever attended a virtual trade show? No. So we learned that there's a big curve, lots of education has to be done. Internally, within your organization, your salespeople don't know what a virtual trade show is if you're just first starting out. So as the sales champion, you're the co-presenter when you're doing a demo for a prospect and when you're training your salespeople. In a couple of slides, I'll show you how we generate leads for the sales team, and that the sales champion needs to be the one who's following up with sales on that list to find out, was there a demo done, was there a presentation made, or is this a lead that we need to discard? Who's going to sell the space or the sponsorships in your show? In our case, and what I believe is that it should be the folks in your organization who are closest to the customer and who have the best client relationship. So for the cleaning show that we did, in that market in trade press, we have print magazines and online products, and they do webcasts and webinars, and they sell that. But there's no live event in our company for that audience. And so those existing print people were the salespeople for that show. They're closest to the customer. They're talking to the people who can make the decision on yes or no to buy a spot, so they marketed it. On the facility side, we have a sales force that sells print and online. But because we do 3 live events in that facility management side, we have a separate sales force that sells just exhibit space at our live events. And I utilize that sales team to sell the virtual event, again, because they're already talking to the people who can make the decision. So that's how we did it. There's lots of different ways to price your virtual trade show and determining your price point. I know we're all going to probably talk about that a little bit, but what I've typically seen is that there's a tiered pricing model out there, an ABC package, or what we labeled them as a platinum, a gold, or a silver sponsor, right? What varies are the benefits that ride along with those sponsorships and those packages. So, for example, we shine a really hot spotlight on our 2 platinum sponsors. We only offer 2 at that level, and they're featured in all of our marketing, attendee marketing and website, and throughout the course of the show as well. Our gold sponsors are a little bit less bright, and our silver sponsors are basically just a booth. We also offered our platinum sponsors the chance to do a 30-second commercial prior to one of our webcasts throughout the course of our show. We had 5 webcasts. I've seen some companies and producers offer sponsors the chance to present a webcast. We chose not to do that. The other variable for us was the number of, or the amount of content assets, or the stuff that they put in their booth and in the resource center. That varied with our packages. Again, I talked about that steep learning curve. And so this is critical, that you train your sales staff so that they are capable and willing and excited about selling the virtual trade show, right? It's imperative that when they're talking to a customer, that they can get excited about it, that they know the benefits of the great lead generation tool that this is, and they understand all the tools and the features of the show. So you train them, and then you practice with them. And by that specifically, what we found is the best way to convert a prospect into a sale it starts with a demo. So we bring them into an actual show environment via GoToMeeting or WebEx, and you walk them through the show, and here are the 4 elements of the show, and this is how you find out, here's how you network with people, and if you're a salesperson, this is how you find prospects, customers already that you've got, and here's how you interact. This is how you generate leads. You need to set goals for those demos. So it may be a certain amount of demos per week or per month, but you hold your salespeople accountable to that. Again, as the champion on the sales side, you are the demo lead guy on that. One thing, here's a critical thing that I did with my salespeople in training is I asked them and made them do a product demo with me. So we used WebEx. I closed my door in my office. They were 15 feet outside the office. They set up a meeting with me through WebEx, called me up, walked me through a demo. And then we went back and we practiced it so that I was comfortable, that they were comfortable with the tool, they understood all the features, they were saying the right things, they were pushing the right buttons. Finally, number 5, and this speaks to how we started to generate leads for the sales team, is you have to educate your prospects. Because again, in our industries, the conversation was, have you heard of a virtual trade show? No. But once you can get them hooked, they're very interested. And so here's how the process worked for us. We announced with a press release probably 8 or 9 months prior to going live that we're going to be launching the first ever virtual trade show in our industry. And we sent that out to our prospect database. That got feedback. Those are leads. 10, 15, 20 people said, what is this? Can you send me some more information? How does it work? What does it cost? There's your first lead list. The on-demand demo is what I was describing earlier. Now, we've already produced two virtual trade shows, so I have 2 demos, of my own proprietary shows that I can bring in and demo people. Before we did a show, we didn't have that. So I just took our customers into somebody else's trade show and demoed it with them, because there's on-demand shows out there all over the place. So our platform provider gave me some visitor passwords, and we just took them into some other environments and did demos, one-on-one. That's the best way, and that's the ultimate sales call. We would travel to other trade shows, and if you get the chance to do that and meet with customers face-to-face, but you can't do a demo, we produced a simple 5-page flip chart that we would begin the conversation with, have you seen a virtual trade show? No. Well, let me show you what it looks like. And once they see a picture like this, it's 1,000 words, and the questions start to follow. And the next week after that show, after you've met with them, you schedule a demo, and it leads to a sale. We pre-recorded a 2.5-minute video, really basically using those slides where I did a voiceover, and we sent an email blast out to our prospect database. Hey, we're launching this virtual trade show. Here's what it looks like. Click on this link. Watch this 2-minute video. I also did a webinar. I pre-recorded a 20-minute webinar where I walked the attendees through a live demo in our show environment, and we did that 2 times. Had about 150 people at each one. Hot leads. Finally, once you've had your first show, you can start to share results and share expectations of what your prospects can expect if they if they join your show. So for example, these were actual results from 15 of our sponsors from one of our shows, and we can show our prospects for the next show. Look, there was over 300 attendees for each of our sponsors. They stuck around in each booth between 5 and 12 minutes, and each exhibitor had about 175 unique content assets downloaded. So the reporting is crucial, as you've heard throughout the course of the day, and this really sells the show as well. So I hope that was helpful. I'll turn it over to Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Todd.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. As Todd said, I think one of the things we recognized when we were brought together to present this panel was that we're all coming from different perspectives in terms of the type of organization we're from and the markets we serve. So, but one of the things that is striking to me is that many of the tools, if not all of the tools that you talked about and processes, are very much resonating with what we do. So we didn't want to do 3 versions of exactly the same presentation, so I'm going to take a slightly different slice of talking you through how we sell a virtual event. First, a little bit about my organization. I work for a company called UBM Electronics, which serves the electrical engineer space, the high-tech design environment, and we serve an audience of about 2 million plus working engineers and engineering professionals. We are part of UBM Media, LLC, who's a global provider of B2B media. You may have seen UBM Studios on the show floor or represented in some of the other sessions. That's a sister division of ours that actually powers virtual event platforms. So our engagement, UBM Electronics engagement with virtual solutions, we're really, we like to think, a leader in our market space in terms of engagement with virtual events. Certainly in terms of the length of our engagement. We did our first event back in 2002. I happen to have been engaged in that one. We took a few years off, as is often the case if you like to experiment with different things. It worked well, so we said, let's not do another one. I'm not quite sure why we didn't, but at any rate, 2 years ago we decided to get back into virtual events and did so very aggressively. And we did, in the past year and a half, we've done 17 virtual events, and we're on track to dramatically increase that number in 2011. So that's a deeper level of engagement that you do, but I think we're a larger organization, so that may speak to some of that. Our focus at present, we're very interested in a range of virtual solutions, some of which are single client solutions that don't even take the shape of a virtual conference. But at the moment, virtual events are definitely a focus of our business, particularly virtual conferences, which plays to our strength as a content-driven organization with a lot of resources in that regard. And I note here as well that we're able to leverage, in our case, an internal solution with UBM Studios, which is a great advantage as well. This is a sample, a screenshot of one of the environments for one of our more recent events on multi-core technology. So we start with what is the event format and what are the goals of the event. Our virtual conferences, which is what we're more here to discuss today, feature, of course, an exhibit hall, but combined with and really driven by technical sessions in an auditorium. And I think we've heard over and over again over the course of this event that content is king with a virtual event, and that's certainly the case with us. I'll talk more about that in the slides that follow. We do generally one live event day, and a 6-month archive for our events. There are certainly endless variations on event format, on event scale, on event duration. We've found it, at least up till now, to be really effective to perfect one format, at least as far as our virtual conferences are concerned. Again, endless variations, but we found going to a client base with a consistent template helps us with execution and helps them understand what the value proposition is. Again, there are variations on it that we deploy, but we try and have at least one core brand that has some consistency that we're always tweaking and improving. Hybrid events are definitely increasingly of interest to us, and having attended Virtual Edge for the last 3 years, I think there's probably 6 times as many sessions this year on hybrid events. So clearly we're not in the minority there. We're also seeing a strong rise as we're able to engage our advertiser base more and more with the value of virtual events, a strong rise in interest in custom events, so single sponsor events or events where an advertiser will come forward and want to bring in their whole ecosystem for an event that they really control. So that's an area that we're focusing on very heavily as well. Our goals in producing our virtual events, our virtual conferences, are focused on a targeted vertical topic, so a narrow area of interest that an attendee base, and in this case a sponsor base, can really identify with and say, I have something to say on this topic. I think that's really key. And focusing on, again, relevant, useful content to the audience within that topic segment. And I think here's the key piece, finding opportunities for our sponsors to become part of that content mix. So they're offering solutions within their booth on the show floor, but they're also being pulled into the technical program in a way that's editorially legitimate, that works for our audience and also helps them get their message across. So that enables us to deliver value to attendees, the content they need, and therefore value to sponsors. Another one of our goals, knowing the market we're facing, is to offer robust support for our exhibitors and for our sponsors, so that when they engage with us on a virtual event, they're really ensured of a good experience. I'll more about that in a minute. So just some commonalities here in packages. Completely coincidentally, I'm sure we're the only two that do this, but we as well have platinum, gold, and silver packages. But I think that the key there is really you want to have, at least in our experience, some tiered offerings built around booths consistently, but with content opportunities at those higher level packages. For instance, we offer our platinum sponsors the opportunity to do their own webinar, and a good portion of our program is built around panels that allow us to combine editorial content, editorially selected speakers, with sponsored speakers in a way that really creates a nice balance and a very effective program. There are leads are a critical part of any package. All of our packages include leads from the booth, but then obviously if you have content engagements, you get leads there, and that really enriches the mix. Just some tips from my experience. At least at present, depends on where your sponsor base is in terms of their engagement with virtual events. But I would say don't overcomplicate the offering so that it's easy for a sponsor to understand what it is they're buying, and just as critically, it's easier for them to execute. So if you're including branding opportunities all over the virtual environment, if you're including a whole host of engagement opportunities within the environment, it may lead to a very, very rich experience, but if it leaves the sponsor's head spinning as they're contemplating the opportunity or getting into the execution, you're not setting yourself up for success. It's hard to talk about pricing, I think, because it does tend to be really market-specific and event/audience-specific. What are the price points your customers are using to pay? How hard to reach is the audience segment you're offering up, and what volume of that audience are you offering? But I guess the suggestion would be to match your price to those variables. As I mentioned, the content opportunities for sponsors significantly increase the value. Last tip, and I'll touch on this again later, is make it easy for your sponsors to support multiple events. Again, if you have consistent formats, if you choose a platform vendor who enables transporting booths from event to event, that's going to make it easier for a sponsor to sign up not just for one event, but for multiple events, which if you only have to sell someone once to get them into multiple events, I think we can all do that math. Talking about how we sell our virtual solutions, UBM Electronics uses an integrated sales team portfolio sell. So we have a fairly large, diverse sales team that sells across a range of solutions. Really, what they go to their clients with is solutions based on that individual client's objectives. So, which has to do with the topic areas of interest, the technologies they're covering. Also, what they're looking to get out of that. Are they looking for leads? Are they looking to get deeper engagement with the client base? Are they looking for share of voice? In that case, a virtual event might be very well for them. If they're just looking for leads and they want a very simple model, obviously a virtual conference is going to be a tougher sell for them. I didn't touch on this in my notes, but I would say that my role, in addition to overseeing our virtual event strategy, is definitely to be there as the key support person for our sales team in the selling process, helping them with demos, helping our internal team understand what the tools are, and helping their clients understand. And that's absolutely critical in addition to all of the very specific tools you mentioned, Todd. So education, overcoming objectives, I think these are really critical, at least in where we are in selling virtual events, which is dealing with a base of sponsors who I'm hoping I can say were, at this point, very skeptical about virtual events as a solution that would work for them. So it was very apparent to us that, clients had either never heard of virtual events or had either had a bad experience themselves or had heard of someone who had. So we heard a lot of, yeah, we did a virtual conference a couple of years ago and it really didn't work out so well for us. So you have to be prepared to overcome those objectives by talking about the strengths of your offering. I think in a lot of cases the pain points, at least if you look a year or two or three back, had to do with simply technical issues and logistical issues related to the vendor or the partners they were working with. So hopefully you've got your own rigorous process that you can take them through, but then also educating them about the vendor partner you're using and bringing your vendor into that discussion can really help as well. Which speaks to my next point, having the right team and the right platform partner is really critical. For us, leading with the content plan is the right approach. And giving an exhibitor the notion that you're a potential exhibitor the notion that you're not just getting them excited about a virtual event, you're getting them excited about the opportunity to speak to an audience interested in a topic that's really critical and held in common. So you don't have to focus solely on selling a virtual event. You're selling an engagement with an audience. You're selling an engagement with a topic-specific community. This doesn't help those of you who are not doing who are still looking to start your first event. But what we've found over the course of doing now, almost 20 events, is that building on success is just key. Going out there in the marketplace with the confidence that you're not just doing one event, you're going to be doing a series of events. Setting up your schedule so that you allow sponsors to sign up for multiple events, as I said, making it easier for them to engage with multiple events, and following up with them after their first event to see what kind of experience they had, talk them through it, and get them excited about what's coming up next. We've just found again and again and again that the sell often gets easier and easier and easier. One of the stats that I like to cite is that in the first year and a half, we did about 30% of our sponsor base were repeat customers, and in many cases coming back for a bigger and bigger sponsorship. In addition, many of those customers who purchased an exhibit booth at one event have come back to us inquiring, hey, how can we do our own virtual event? So I talked about the custom ecosystem events. Those really built organically out of our editorially driven conference business, and I think it's terrific to be aware of those opportunities. So that's it for me.
Okay. Well, thanks, Christian. And again, I'd like to thank all of you for being here and staying. I know we're standing between you and the bar, so we'll we'll move along and have a little bit of time for questions as well. I am the Director of Education at the Healthcare Financial Management Association, so this is a bit of a snapshot of who we are. roughly 35,000 members, and our members are CFOs or those involved in at least the revenue cycle for hospitals and healthcare systems. As many of you in associations, we provide a lot of live education. We have a large annual meeting. We have numerous regional seminars. We do roughly 80 webinars a year. And as well, we've now done 2 virtual conferences, both in 2010. And of course, we do provide CPE, which is continuing education for CPAs, which is the bulk of our membership. And, we were talking about content being king. Healthcare reform is the hot topic this year, especially in our organization. And so the best content that we can put out there on the virtual conference is what's going to draw our members to the virtual meeting. And that's really just a snapshot of our website. So we decided to do our first virtual conference back in January of 2010. And we did have some goals. We identified goals for the conference. First of all, to extend the reach of our face-to-face live meetings, to offer additional ways for our members to connect with our sponsors and vendor partners. We needed more engagement rather than just the one time at the annual meeting. We did decide to offer the virtual conference free to both members and non-members for the first conference. And so that's a huge benefit for folks to be able to earn CPE with great content while sitting at their desk. And then finally, we wanted to extend the membership to other markets to possibly draw in some other folks from the C-suite, so hospital CEOs, CIOs. And one goal that I didn't mention in here is that we wanted to make sure that our virtual conference would at least break even, despite the fact that we were not earning any revenue from registration fees. Then as well, our initial goal was a registration goal of 4,000 people and a live attendance goal, which was really more important to us, of at least 50% of that, because I think we've heard in some of the other sessions, when it's a free conference, roughly 40 to 50% will show up. And then, of course, attendee and exhibitor satisfaction was definitely a goal. So this is a copy of this is a shot of our exhibit hall, but I want to talk with you a little bit about sort of the footprint of our meeting. This was not a hybrid meeting. We have not done any hybrid meetings. These are standalone, separate virtual conferences. The first one, as I mentioned, was complimentary for members and non-members. And we had 2 days of live sessions where we were allowed to provide CPE. So by live, I mean they were simulcast. We recorded them ahead of time, videotaped them ahead of time, and the presenters were available for the live Q&A. So 2 days of that, roughly, if folks attended all 8 sessions, they could earn 8 CPEs. And then we had 20 on-demand sessions, which were repurposed webinars or sessions from our annual meeting that were in an on-demand mode, and the conference was open for 90 days. Our second conference, which we're in the on-demand period right now, we just held it the first week of December. We had, again, the 4 live sessions over each of 2 days. We reduced the number of on-demand sessions to 10. And in our first session, we had a networking lounge and a career center, and we dropped the career center. There was less engagement there. And we did charge non-members this time for our virtual conference. And so now this is the most recent conference, which we've exceeded our numbers from the previous one. And I think, as both of you have said, you build on a success. And once your members get more comfortable with it, and that's not registered, that's actually live attendance. I don't want to confuse that. So we had roughly 3,000 people attend the live sessions. Booth visits, 8863, file downloads, and our overall satisfaction score was, so what this means is that on a 5-point scale, 67% of our attendees rated the programs as a 5, being excellent. And then, of course, the reach was, we reached 700 facilities in 50 states. In terms of exhibit sales, you'd be
deluxe.
amazed to know, but actually we call them silver, gold, and platinum.
Oh, do you?
So,
Okay.
so we do have the 3-tiered pricing. There is a great deal of variability between these. So at the standard area, they get a booth. They do not get the pre- and post-show lists. They do not get scrolling logos in the various halls. And another thing, just for you association folks, we're all very protective of our email contact information for our members. We have a policy that we do not, when we sell our lists, we do not allow emails to be sold. However, in our virtual conference, we did allow emails as part of the pre and post list. And that was very appealing to our sponsors and exhibitors. As part of the deliverables, we did spend a lot of time training folks to build their booths. We wanted them to be just as successful at the virtual conference as they are at our live conference. We also put some incentives in, so we had some really great prizes. You know, we had an iPad and a flip phone, or excuse me, a flip video camera, and there were roughly 10 different raffles that you could get into by visiting our booths, visiting our own HFMA booth, attending the most number of educational sessions, various things. And those really, I think, did drive some traffic. And then in terms of selling points, I think both Todd and Christian have covered some of the things. One thing that I would like to add is, as part of an education team, we're always evaluating what we provide for our members. So we want the feedback. Did this meet their needs, their objectives? But we also did an overall conference survey and evaluation. And our members loved it. They loved it. You know, it's what's not to like? It's free CPE. They're sitting at their desks. The content was top-notch. And many of the exhibitors also gave us glowing comments. And we loved the engagement in the hall. You know, in fact, some of our members put comments in such as, I got to go into the exhibit hall and visit booths without committing to a sales call. So we used those quotes as part of the sell then for the next conference. So I would encourage you to do that. Renewing contracts is critical. We start right after our live event is over. We've already sold booths for our next event, which we don't even have the exact dates for yet, but it will be sometime in November. It's good to get them while they're still warm. Right after a conference, you know, it's really good to cite up some repeat contracts. The other thing that is important is the event statistics. Now, we've all shared statistics up here, number of file downloads and number of visits and so forth. The statistics that we give are averaged. And if you'll notice our first bullet there, start with the total attendance numbers, but do not give individual exhibit numbers out. So any of the platforms will give you some fantastic reports on the back end. You know, what was the most popular booth, how many people actually visited, how many minutes did an individual spend in that booth. And so we get the collective data. We don't share that with the exhibitors. They can pull their own data. They can't pull what their competitor, how many visits they got. And again, you know, similar to your live events, you really want to support the vendors in having a successful meeting. So for our second conference, We actually spent a bit of time getting our exhibitors educated into how to connect when folks visited their booth. Many times what happens is somebody will come into the booth and then 3 sales folks will, descend upon them and start chatting, and, they get, and then nobody responds. So we help them with that. Another thing that we did for our second conference was we actually had a dress rehearsal. So 2 days before the live event, we had a dress rehearsal. We had all of our exhibitors, booths loaded, our staff was there, and we didn't have any outside attendees, of course. This was on the back end. But our staff went in and visited the booths and got some feedback related to whether or not they were engaged once they entered the booth. So any training that you can do for the exhibitors and sponsors to help them succeed is going to help you sell the next show. What else? That's about it. Do you want to open up to questions?
Yes, there was one question. When you start thinking about your pricing for your different packages, I know you all came at it a different way, but how would you correlate that to your physical trade show pricing if you have a physical trade show? And I assume you all do it at some point.
Well, we didn't really compare it to the price of our physical event. The approach we took was, we're a for-profit company, and so, the CEO of my company says, Todd, if we're going to do a live event, I need this much revenue and this much margin. So I knew what that meant, and I I back-ended into it. I'll probably be able to sell between 12 and 20 sponsors, and so I created some pricing levels, looked at what other folks were charging, and worked it out that way. So it turns out that a standard booth at my virtual show was about $1,000 more than a 10 by 10 at our live event, and it just went up from there. And we got some pushback on that. Well, why are you charging me so much for this and so much for that? But you work through that, and that's how we established our price points.
Yeah, I would say we have a pretty robust face-to-face event business, but in developing the virtual event business, at least in terms of package pricing, again, that wasn't so much a point of comparison. I think it was looking across all of the solutions we offer, particularly those that have an online component or a lead component, and making sure that this one worked, that we were not overcharging or giving away the farm relative to others. But I think at the end of the day, Todd, I think you nailed it. It's also a question of, what kind of top line revenue are you looking for relative to your investment? What kind of margin do you need? And that's a significant factor as well. I think it's a lot of components what the market will bear, rather than just a direct comparison to a booth, face-to-face booth price.
Right. Did you find that that doing the live event was your live event affected by your virtual event?
I can respond to that. That was one of the reasons we decided not to do a hybrid event. Sort of when you do a scientific study, you want to control the variables, and we wanted to see if this virtual event would, as a standalone, we'd be able to generate revenue to meet our costs. And in both cases, we doubled our revenue over expense. And so, that's what we decided to do. But that being said, our annual conference in June had, I believe it was about 20% more attendees this year than we've had previously. Now, I don't know if we can attribute that to the fact that we had a virtual conference. Maybe we can attribute it to the fact that healthcare reform passed last year and folks need to know what they have to do about it, but we have not seen any cannibalization.
Are there any other questions? Do you want to come up to the mic, girl? See how fast I can get back to you.
Is this okay? When you sold your mailing list, did you let your members opt in or opt out of the
We did.
emails?
We did.
And what was your percentage of opt-outs?
Well, They opt in and opt out when they pay their membership dues. That's a one-time little checkbox.
Okay.
But what we did do when they registered for the conference, we did say that because this was a complimentary event and it is supported by sponsors and vendors, that we would be sharing their emails.
Thank you.
For those of us that might be launching a virtual event for the first time, what did you find to be the most compelling sales points? Since it's an unproven event and you can't say, well, last year we had this many attendees. What were the selling points that really resonated with your exhibitors or sponsors?
I had that conversation hundreds of times. We've done 2 shows, and I'm very close in time from having those conversations. So again, it was a big education process for my folks, but my customers want to sell stuff, and the mission of our company is to bring new customers to our existing our customer base, to improve their sales bottom line. So that's what it's all about. You start with that. And one of the parts of my pitch was we have customers who exhibit at our live event, and some of those same customers sponsor webcasts. I position a virtual trade show right between the 2 of them. Yeah. Okay? It's not nearly as good as being face-to-face and having the human interaction, but it's not as static as a webcast where there's no interaction between you and the customer. So, our customers want to sell stuff to their customer base, and we're creating this really cool new environment and a way for them to engage with prospects. Would you like to hear more about it? And once you get them hooked, and they're going to say yes. So it's going to cost you nothing to sit through a demo with me except 20 minutes of your time. And I don't know if I mentioned that, but promise them that the demo is going to be 20 minutes or less so that they're not thinking it's going to take up half of their day. It's all about getting them hooked into that goal that this is going to generate hot leads for them.
Yeah. I'd put it just slightly differently. We've got, for the market we serve, we offer a range of solutions, and many of them are focused on delivering leads. There's a direct correlation between that and what the need among our advertiser base is. It's a very much a lead-driven business and increasingly an ROI-driven business. But we're also at a point with our advertiser base where it's a question of what to do with all these leads, or what do all these leads mean, or what does just this list of email addresses mean to me if I'm just going to get these and I'm going to dump them in some database somewhere. So I think the conversation with virtual events for us starts often with something like the volume of leads and the quality of those leads, which is driven by the audience that we're able to drive. But then the conversation quickly goes to something I probably should have covered more, and I was glad you did, which was the quality of the data and the depth of the data that you get about those people within the environment. That you're not just getting business card data, you're seeing what in your booth they engaged with, how long they engaged with it. If they had chat discussions with people, you're getting access to those chat transcripts. So getting a really granular sense that helps you qualify that lead, a supercharged lead, if you will, really advance that conversation for us. The other thing that I think is part of the mix as well that takes this to kind of a leads plus mindset is that you're not just getting an anonymous set of people or people with a lot of data behind them. You're getting the chance actually to engage with those people and not just walk away from the event with a name that you can follow up with later, but someone that you've had a series of perhaps meaningful conversations within the event environment. And so it's that combination of data plus the chance to establish some connections that I think our advertisers found compelling from the beginning.
We have 2 more questions, a woman over there and then someone here, and then we're running over.
Yep.
If that's okay with you, fine. Otherwise, if you're going to be in the room for a little bit, can
Sure.
someone approach you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the revenue side. I think Marie was the only one who talked about deriving revenue from attendance. I know live events, you have sponsors and then you charge for attendance. That's how you're making your money. But virtually I'm seeing webinars charging, some not charging. I think, Todd, you referred to the single sponsor programming. So then is that a free event? I mean, what is working out there from a revenue outside of your booth sponsors? What's working, what's not? Are you expecting to charge attendees?
I would say from my vantage point, our larger company, UBM, is responsible for doing, I should know the total number of virtual conferences and virtual events that we do. But across those, there's a lot of experimentation even outside our group. And the question of getting revenue from attendees, from users for virtual events is hot on everyone's list. There certainly have been a number of experiments across UBM with that. I think where we are at present is that the model is still being perfected is one, and I think the other thing is it's just letting the technology and user expectations catch up. I heard in a session this morning, I'm wishing I remembered which one, that simply, at present, users expect content online to be free. That's probably nothing that's a novel concept to anyone here. But I think that's what we're battling up against. I think the more unique your content is, the more it can't be found anywhere else. It would stand to reason the better chance you'd have of charging for it. At present, we're in the exploratory stage, I'd say, but we're still focusing more on advertiser revenue at present as regards virtual events.
Okay, we have another question here.
Hi, I was curious to know specifically about your contract with your partner or partners. When you're developing that contract, typically you're paying out to them. And so what I'm trying to find out is, did you build anything unique into your contract to try to save yourselves money, such as ad sales or ad credits? What have you done, or are you just paying a lump sum to your partner or partners? And in tandem, what are you doing with your sponsors and advertisers? Are you providing them in-kind services, or are you expecting them to pay you a lump sum in order for you to build your revenue stream building off of this lady's question over here?
For us, if I'm understanding your question correctly, we signed a contract based on sort of the footprint for our virtual conference, how many halls we wanted, how many live sessions, how many archived on-demand sessions. And then as well for our sponsors, they purchased a booth or they purchased a higher level of sponsorship. That was it.
It's not quite germane to the selling sponsorships topic here, but since it was asked, I'd say one observation I'd make is as regards the contract that you sign with your platform vendor, which is I think one of the things you're asking about, or the selection of a platform vendor. I think where a lot of the details is one is the scale of the event, how many webinars, as you said, how many booths, but what types of services they're bundling into that is a real question, and the availability of those services can really eliminate a lot of pain points in terms of support for exhibitors, live day event support, technical support, assistance with communication with speakers. Those are all things that when I'm looking at a platform vendor, I ask a lot of very, very careful questions about, because it just can make the difference between a painful experience and a pleasant one as the event producer. Do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I'd add to that discussion is to not sign a contract with a platform provider and pay them a deposit until you're certain that you've hit a goal point for your show. So make sure you've got your sponsors sold and contracted before you sign a contract with the platform provider.
Do you have time to take one more question?
Sure.
Actually, there's a woman up here who has one, and then this gentleman.
Yeah. So go if you need to go, but if you have another question, I think we're
We're
free to
good.
stay. Yeah.
Yeah, my question was more about the pre- and post-conference lists. Is that something standard to provide? Because I was told that we would just do leads, like we would guarantee a certain number of leads per level.
Well, and I was in one of the sessions this morning, the virtual conference can pretty much mirror your live conference. And so that's something that we do at our live conference. Based on levels of exhibiting or sponsoring, they can get lists of, of attendees. And so that's what we did for our virtual conference as well. Did that answer your question?
I was just more curious, is it a standard to do that for virtual events, to do the pre and post?
You have to build in some really nice deliverables.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's one of the deliverables. Anything else that you can do, some of the other deliverables we had scrolling logos in the main hall, in the education hall. We allowed them different places to put their collateral, so they might have, they had a Jumbotron screen that would pop up in their area. They could play video. There's all different options that you can give them as deliverables.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, I've seen that model where the gold, silver, bronze sponsorship levels the number of leads that you get are based on the level. So you get 300 if you're silver, you get 500 if you're gold. And we chose not to do that. We give everybody the list of everybody who registered, and our initial plan was to only release that list after the event. And then a couple of our exhibitors before the show asked if they could have the list so they could mark it. And we thought, well, why wouldn't we want them to do that and encourage people to come to the show? And because you get about 40 to 60% of the registrants will attend the show. And if your exhibitors are working on your behalf to attract people to come to the show and increase that percentage, why would you not? So that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Oh.
Presentation today. I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else did. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.